Well, hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be back this week. I did that. I'm so excited to be back this. I I think I am doing that on my computer. You guys are like, we don't hear anything. What's going on? I had you on another screen. Ah, the life of the day of Karen. But I'm not one of those Karens, just so that we're aware. Welcome to Power Surge. And this is where we talk about empowering journeys and things in people's lives that help them get to a better place and to know more about spirituality. And I am really, really excited to have our guests again today. I had so many people reach out laughter last week going, "You've got to have Raina on again. You've got to have Raina on again." And guess what? We have Raina on again. Woohoo! Before I talk about that and bring her on, though, I do want to invite you all personally. I am starting another show on Mondays at 1 Eastern Time, and it is going to be called Karen Isms. So, kind of like those mistakes I just made, and I talk about them. We will have Karen Isms, which will be some training. It will be some laughter, it'll be some empowering stories. But it'll be one of those shows. But this first week, we're going to go over the retreat that I'm holding in October, October 12th through the 19th. And our special guest is so giving and so loving and so special that she is going to give you a coupon code if you want to go to the retreat. On her coupon code, you put in I am 500. Oh, wrong one. I am 500. It's very bottom, my dear. There it is. I am 500. So here's the retreat URL and then the coupon code. And let's go ahead and get up the QR code because that's a whole lot easier to scan in the QR code. Up there at the top. I don't know if you can see that. So the QR code up there at the top, we'll leave it there for the show so that you can get that and put in I am 500. And that'll help you get that extra $500 off. Okay, enough said about that. Monday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, Karenisms, and come with your questions because we're going to answer them live during the show. I am so blessed and so lucky. I was telling our guest that I've actually had several old friends that I haven't talked to in years reach out to me this last week and say, "Oh, how did you get Raina on your show? She's like, she's just like there. She's like everything." And I said, "Yeah, I know. I'm really, really lucky." And so I'm going to bring Raina on because she is everything. And I just absolutely love her. And Raina, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Karen. It's amazing to be back, and thank you for that amazing introduction. I was blushing over here. You guys couldn't see it, but I was.
Oh, dear. I have echoing in the background still, so I apologize for that. Keep going. I'm so excited. Today we're going to talk about free will versus people who don't, the NPCs and some things like that. I'd like to just jump in and get going on some of that great information.
Absolutely. So, I just want to give a little bit of a disclaimer because this is very hard for a lot of people to accept. It was even hard for me to accept throughout my life, and even up sometimes recently, and even in sports, things I know when I see it going on, when I see it happening, even with my life, we like to there throughout your life, you'd like to believe that you have this idea called free will. And sadly, when we understand what's happening in life and we understand how our lives are meant to roll out, there are very few of us that actually have free will. In fact, 99% of the human population does not have free will. And there's a reason for that. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But I want to tell your listeners and everybody that this is very challenging. I know it's going to be in our ego to fight this right off the bat and be like, nope, nope, Raina's wrong. Raina's wrong. Because even I did that with my higher self. I would talk to and I was like, look, I was like, don't tell me that I can't do this because, this is supposed to happen. And what ends up happening is we tend to fight the things that we don't want to accept as truth. And truth is really the hardest thing for us to understand because in a world of belief systems, in a world of not knowing, and a world that humanity is such a young, unevolved species that we like to tend to think we know more than we kind of do. And it's kind of like if you've ever had children, they get to an age when they're young, they believe in certain things, they say certain things, and you're like, okay, because their imaginations. And we're in that stage right now. And so I tell people that in order to understand this, if the beginning of humanity was zero, and then let's say like in the 100 years is the end of humanity, we are at the age about like 1.5 years old right now. And so we are very much in our infancy, and we have so much more evolution to handle and to evolve through. And that's a wonderful thing because that gives us a lot to look forward to. But being young, this is why right now throughout our evolution, we have stuck to things like our belief systems, and we hold on to materialism. We hold on to these ideas such as, this thing is going to make me who I am, and I have to represent this idea in order to be popular, in order to be liked, I have to have money, etc. Because these are very primal, basic needs, and most of us operate on that level. And so when we want to start understanding free will, we have to start asking ourselves, well, what part of free will do we really have? And relearning who I was and learning the first part of my life that I was under no free wills also in order for me to understand what free will I needed to gain. The first thing I had to understand was that. And I didn't like that. And a lot of people, when they start awakening and they start realizing, wow, I don't have any free will, or I have very little free will, only like in certain choices may I have, that I'm actually able to do things. So I give this example all the time that if I call them NPCs. If you're a gamer, I don't know if you've ever played any games, Dr. Karen, and
I have a son that's a extreme gamer.
yeah.
So I don't play so much, but I know about
So
it.
if he plays RPG games, like role playing games, and that, then like you're this character, you create this fantasy world. You go into it, you're holding the controller, and you're basically dictating what the character does. You're answering for it. You're making it do what you want it to do. And if you were to bring consciousness to this video game character, it would think that it was alive. It would think that
Right.
there's nobody controlling me. I'm doing these actions. I'm doing what I'm here to do, and I'm making my own choices. But what we call our higher selves is actually our true self. And this is something that we have to shift from, because we think that there's this higher self that's above us, that's much smarter than us, that's separate from us, but really it's who we truly are. So in order to understand our higher self and to understand free will, we have to take a look at our objective idea of what we're projecting. So our higher self creates who we are going to be as a character. And that's why I brought up kind of like the video game thing, because we can all understand video games. So it'd be kind of like a game designer say, what kind of game should I make? Okay, I want to make a fantasy game. And in this fantasy game, and I want to create these characters, and here's the main star, and here's all the the friends and the relationships that it's going to have. And that's exactly what we do as spirits when we create our soul and we create this character that we're living. So
So my belief that the Matrix is real is real.
So the Matrix is real, but the Matrix isn't something that we want to get out of. And we
Right.
tend to think that, like, we watch the movie The Matrix, right? And we think that like, and And we have this misconception that we're trying to get escape from something, but we're not trying to
Right.
escape from it. We're trying to understand it through the experience.
Right.
And so, like how Neo jumps into that, the Matrix, and all of a sudden he's controlling, and he's still controlling it from, him, but he's asleep in that side. But he feels like that world is real. It's the same exact thing. And so with our higher self, which mine is I am I. My true self is called I. So I have a conversation with myself all the time, and Caleb will attest to this. He'll hear me talking and answering in full conversations. And throughout my life, I would always be like, okay, well, if we have no free will, then what's the point of having choice? And that's something a lot of people ask me. So when we're building these characters, in order for us to gain understanding of self, we have to go through certain things. So just like a game, you have to fight certain bosses, you have to do certain tasks, you have to do certain things to achieve a certain goal. That's what our higher self is doing. Our higher self is making sure that we are dictating our life blueprint so that we can act out and do what it is we need to have done. And so we may feel like we're making our own choices and we're doing what we're really here to do, but it's actually not. We're adhering to our higher self and what it chooses us to do, and to our life blueprint.
So, would you kind of explaining it in Karen terms? Um, we have our what we call our inner child, which we go to for fun and whatever. We've got our serious side. We've got our petty side. No, nobody should have that. They're kind of fun sometimes, but nobody should have that. Have whatever you want. I'm not going to judge. We've got our business side, but that higher self is basically just, it's no different than those other things, other than it's the one that's telling us what to do and how to do it and why to do it and dictating it
Yes.
to us. So in in essence, we have control, just not the we that we talk to or know of. The
Yes.
ones that have control are the ones that are like you, in communication with I. And
Yeah.
so if I were in communication with my higher self, whatever
It,
it's called,
yeah. Whatever.
yeah, whatever it ends up being called, then I would at that point truly have choice, because then I could, my son does D&D. He's a dungeon master like no other.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so they have to write out the backstory, and I watch them play. And I mean, those backstories are notebooks long. I people come and I'm like, oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
is just a character.
Yes.
But hearing you explain it like that, it makes more sense, because it's not just a character. This is them. And this is the character they want to play out. And
Yes.
they do. If the tunnel collapses, and then they go into their magic bag of tools and they say, oh well, I'm going to use this and it's going to make me do that,
Yes.
or something. And so that makes a lot of sense for people who may not be on that level of understanding the higher self not being the universe but being us.
Well, we are the universe and we are
Yeah.
everything. So there's no separation. And that's the hardest part, is if you see separation, it's because you haven't got to a point where you don't see the separation. And that's why you have no choice, because you're still
Right.
trying to understand your who you are. And in order for us to understand that, we have to have someone in control of us, which is us. We're in control of us. There's no outside external God or demons or angels or anybody dictating what we're doing except for us. We create everything that we are. Like I created this character, Raina, and I've been many different forms of Raina throughout my life, and I will be many different forms, in the years to come. And as I evolve and as my understanding evolves, as I regain that knowledge and as I evolve that knowledge, because the universe itself and who we are evolves, because that's what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to figure out all the infinite possibilities. But as you as a parent, when your child was, let's say, 0 through 18, you didn't give him a lot of, or him or her, a lot of choices, right? You kind of, raised them, dictated what they ate, dictated what they do, and that's exactly what your higher self does. When it understands that it has to start from the beginning and go through these things, the human that you are is very unevolved. That's why our minds are blank. That's why we don't understand what's going on. We don't know what's on the other side. We don't know what's happening. All we understand is this feels real to me, so this must be real. And as you go through life after life after life, you start to evolve a little bit. And so, like a parent, your higher self dictates what you're doing constantly until until it starts, okay, well, we're at a point in our evolution where I'm going to give you challenges, and I'm going to see if you can figure out to step away from these ideas, and to step away from this identity, and step away from everything, and make the choice to figure out who you are on your own. And that's when you start to have free will. And at first it's just a little bit, because if you haven't made that choice, if you haven't said, and you can't just make it mentally, you can't just say, you know what, I heard Raina say this, I don't like that I'm being controlled, I want free will. It doesn't work like that. Your soul has to come to a point where you're just like, you know what, I I'm willing to face whatever challenges I'm willing to go through, no matter how tough they are. I'm willing to let go of whatever belief systems, whatever ideals I've held on to that either create chaos, suffering, pain, whatever. And I'm willing to open up and expand to new ideas, new consciousness, new levels of understanding. And when you get that here, and you really truly mean that here, all of a sudden that's when your higher self says, okay, I get that on that third dimensional level. And so now all of a sudden you start to play with a little bit of free will. And the more and more you show that you're capable of understanding yourself, and you're able to put yourself through situations and face them without relapsing into judgment, anger, fear, holding on to materialism, all these things, then you start to become one of free will.
The whole way you described that is fascinating. And having been a parent and still a parent and a grandparent, um, I like how you put, we don't give our kids a lot of choices. Um, I was an odd parent, a go figure.
No, not you.
No, but I made them learn, and so I gave them, this is the law. You do this. But then it got to, as soon as I saw that they were dependent upon me to make a decision, or they only did it because mom said so,
Yeah.
I would change the games on them and say, it's your choice, but you have to live with the
Yes.
consequences. It's
Yes.
your choice. I don't care what you do. I love you unconditionally, but you have to live with the consequences.
Yes.
And homework. Funny example, but homework. I had two children that did their homework at school, put it in their lockers, and never brought it home. I had one child that brought it home to do it and did it diligently and handed it in every day. My other two left it in their lockers. And so those two are getting bad grades. And the other one, who isn't getting it done quickly in classroom, is not getting bad grades. And the first time I just said, because I was always saying, turn in your homework, turn in your homework, turn in your homework. First time I just went, I don't care if you turn it in, it's your choice. You live with the consequences. And that first report card where they got some F's, they just went, oh, they knew I was going to kill them. I mean, not literally, but
Right.
they were like, ah. And I went, oh, how embarrassing for you.
Yeah.
And they went, what do you mean for us? I said, doesn't impact my eternal salvation. This impacts you and what happens in your life. Says, you made a choice, you live with it.
Yeah.
And so I pulled away from doing that so that they would be forced to make what they think are choices, but their higher self to take over where I wasn't the one controlling them anymore. And so I'm hoping that I did a good thing for doing that because they're all good adults. They're great adults.
They are. But see, that's the thing. That's judgment in itself, right? Because we're hoping that what we're teaching them is going to make them turn out to be, good people. But there's no such thing as good or bad people. And everything that's happening in your lives are it's you guys are contracted, so you're not actually their mother, they're not actually your children, you're just souls taking on these characters, like in a movie, like you say, like you all were movie stars on the other side, and you're taking these roles and you're coming as Dr. Karen Perkins and they're coming as them, and they're just acting out a movie right now. And so what I like what you said, consequences, but consequences aren't necessarily bad or good, because again, there is no good or bad. Consequences will bring you to actions of understanding. So I had dyslexia and disabilities. I had a hard time in school, and everyone, my parents were the same way. Oh, you're getting bad grades, you're not going to go to college, you're not gonna. Well, you know what, my path led me down a different way. I did not do well in traditional school, and yeah, but when I got tested, they realized that, oh, she's got disabilities and her IQ is really high, but because she can't comprehend what she's reading. And if you hear me now read, I read like a first grader. It's terrible. And sometimes even when I'm doing things, people snicker and stuff, but I don't care. I laugh at it. I'm like, yeah. But I have 4 degrees in medicine. I'm a doctor of Oriental medicine. And so what good do those grades do me? Nothing. Those just
Right.
me that at that level of schooling where I was at, and that made me push me to, well, okay, well, I know I want to do certain things in my life, and I know how this universe works. I know how this level works, where we have to do certain things and attain our puppy papers, as I say it, in order to, make it seem like we're important in life. And so I was like, well, I like medicine, so how do I do this? Well, I can't read these big thick books that they gave me. So I started watching, lectures, and I started listening to audio. I would record the teacher, with these things, and I started listening. So my consequences back then weren't bad or good, even though parents would be like, oh, you got bad grades, that shows that you're. No, not necessarily. To some, yes, it'll lead them down the path that they're meant to be, and that's why they're getting bad grades. Other people, I know people that got good grades that are doing nothing with their lives, and that's fine. That doesn't make them good or bad people. It just means that at that point, it's diverging them to the path that they're meant to be.
Right.
And this is something that we have to learn to let go. And this is an attachment to conditioning, that when we don't have free will, we are conditioned to old belief systems, old ideas, and old ways of thinking that pass on fears to the people around us, so that they become conditioned, so that it acts in their non-free will, and that they go along their path. And
Well, that makes perfect sense. Keep going. I was sorry I interrupted that because that was flowing so beautifully.
Oh, that's okay. So we have to take a step back. And I always tell parents this. I go, love your kids regardless if they get good, bad grades, if they're doing this, if they get someone pregnant when they're young, if they don't decide to marry, whatever is going on, love your kids, love your friends, love whatever. And that, because our judgments just show us our limitations. And when we judge others for what we think what people should have or should be doing, that shows that we're limited in our way of thinking. We're not accepting others. And that's an act of non-free will. That's being an NPC. We're not acting because we haven't realized ourselves that we're under this illusion of free will, but we don't have it. And we're just acting because we don't have an understanding of self yet. And that even brings you to the point of understanding through judgment.
That makes sense. And I like to say I'm non-judgmental, but I know I am.
Yeah, we
I
all
judge
are.
myself all the time. And I judge that person on the motorcycle. I love motorcycles, but down here, what they a very few will get two guys on a motorcycle, and one jumps off the back and will smack your phone right out of your hands, and they take off because phones are something they can sell for a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I judge when I see two guys on a motorcycle. Do I need to, hold on tighter to my phone? Are they going to do this? And you know, if I don't want to take in my phone, don't take it out. You know?
And we learn, right?
I mean, instead of judging, are these guys going to do this or not? Why don't I just not even put the temptation out there? And if they take someone's phone, they're feeding their family.
Yeah.
And if that's what it takes, and I'm not encouraging anybody to do anything with or without the law, but I think if we had an understanding of why people did some of the things they did,
Yes.
we would not put them in that category of they are bad.
Well, and you hit it right on the head. We don't have an understanding of what people are doing, including ourselves. And that's part of non-free will, because most people live life thinking that we're supposed to live a good life, that we're supposed to live by laws, and we're supposed to appease a God out there. And if we don't, then we're going to this terrible place, fire and brimstone, where we're going to get punished for the rest of our existence. And how I don't want to say the word sad, but how limiting is that idea? How much destruction does that create in our own selves? Thinking that we're out the gate, we're already screwed up, and that we got to constantly do these things and jump through hoops and walk this fine line, because if we don't, then all of a sudden bad things are going to happen to us. And we have to go through that, because we have to understand that there's no such thing as good or bad, right or wrong, positive, negative, backwards, forwards, better, worse. Remember Raina's 5 no-nos and that. And in order for us to evolve, we have to go through that judgment. So when people come up to me and they see the ankh that I wear, and then they think it's like the devil or something like that, I educate them. I'm like, actually, no, the ankh is part of the flower of life. It's actually a geometric pattern. It actually represents the unity of life and the cycle between life and death, and masculine and feminine. And it was used of great power, great vibration, and it still is. And then people like kind of take a step back, and some will be like, just go about their day, because their consciousness is not ready to hear it. And that's the key. You will be an NPC, and if not free will, as long as you're not willing to hear something new.
Right.
If you're so bent on being stuck to what you've been taught to believe, and you're unwilling to change and evolve, if your belief systems and thoughts are the same as they were 10 years ago, then we're an NPC. And that if you're not constantly questioning yourself, questioning what you think, even me and I go back at it. And that, because when I'm trying to understand it, and even that free will, when I was younger, I was like, don't tell me I don't have free will. I'm going to go out and do this and prove to you that I don't have, that I have free will. And in that act, I was showing that I didn't have free will, because I was trying
Right.
to prove it. you know
Right.
and it wasn't until I got older that I was like, okay, I'm willing to listen to and accept things that I may not like, that I may not want to accept. But the moment I did, that's when the freedom came. And then all of a sudden I said, okay, well, now that I have this amount of free will, and the more I grow, the more I get, the more I gain, you have to, like you said, accept the consequences. There's no good or bad consequences. It's either going to lead you here, or
Mhm.
it's going to lead you there. And when you get to that point, you're going to have another choice, because the more choices you have will lead you to the path of I am. It'll say, well, I am everything. I am responsible for myself. I am ready for myself. I dictate. I see myself as a God in total control of everything and anything, which means that I become a creator in that minute. And when I become a creator, that means everything I am thinking and everything that I'm feeling is now dictated by what I'm experiencing in my life. And that means I have a will to change it. Whereas people that are NPCs, they don't. Their outside matches exactly what they're experiencing, and they are in an endless loop of stuck that they can't get out, because they have to resolve that side of them.
Okay. I want to sidebar that and come back to that, but I want to ask, we've been watching, me and the mouse in my pocket, no, my husband and I have been watching a lot of NDEs, near death experiences.
Yes.
And a lot of what they're saying matches what you're saying, and a lot doesn't.
Yeah.
I've always, my whole life, been interested in this stuff, but didn't have the will, the skill, the whereabouts to go very deep with it.
Okay.
And it wasn't until about 2 years, and we laughed, and because you said not the no, five no nos, where I said my life spiraled. Well, and I think I was part of the reason it did, but I think that was my big awakening.
Yes.
I mean, my higher self and I have at least met now.
Yes.
We don't talk all the time, but we have met.
You talk all the time. You just don't listen.
I just don't. We talk constant. My higher self talks all the time.
Yeah.
I just don't listen.
Exactly. Exactly. It's always saying, Karen, Karen, listen to me.
But tell me, what do you think about the NDE experiences that people tell? Because so many of them are almost identical.
So near death experiences are based on, yes, some truth, but also it's based on your belief system as well. So where some people believe like angels are real, like they'll like when I say, oh, I got a tattoo of Metatron's cube, and you can't really see it because I can't line up the camera right now, but they'll say, oh, Archangel Metatron, oh, the right hand man of God, and it's like, no, like when we're young, we believe in certain things because we're told to believe in that. Just like when I went to Catholic school, they were told, no, you have to believe this is God, this is Mary, this is this, and these are people, but they're not people. Like archangels aren't people. Like Metatron is like an archangel of information. It's an energy. It's like almost like it's since we're consciousness and we have to branch off to do certain things, we create energies to send information to understand, to here on Earth and to other planets so that we can evolve. So it's not really, so when we say it's a messenger of like a God or a God, and that what we're really saying is we're saying that like it's information that's coming here from ourselves, which we are this idea we call God, that comes here so that we can learn to evolve. But in order for that, so what with the near death experiences is that if someone is less evolved than, and I don't want to say that because I don't like the way that sounds either, but if someone's younger in their evolution, let's say that, and they have, and they believe certain things, let's say they believe in like Jesus and that, well, you're not going to see something that somebody else understands because your brain isn't going to comprehend it and you're going to resist it. That's why people who die who believe in certain things, maybe like Allah or maybe an Egyptian god or something, they'll see that idea because that connects them. They'll accept that more than if they see something that they don't believe in. So if someone says, well, I don't believe in this God, I don't believe in any God. Well, imagine what would happen if one of the gods, like one of the 3,000 gods and goddesses that are here on earth came to them and said that they would reject that idea. So during near death experiences, yes, we have this consciousness of separation because our body is not really like attached to us. It's only like energetically attached to us. And so when we have this experience, our experience through near death experience is based on what we can comprehend, if that makes sense. So that's why there'll be some similarities to near death experiences, like, oh, I felt a pull and I saw this white light. It's not, it's kind of like that, but what the human brain is trying to comprehend and what they're experiencing, that's how the human brain does it. So when they go over there and they say, oh, I saw angels and I saw this, or I saw the Egyptian god, Bastet, and that we create that so that we can handle what we're experiencing.
Right. I think the thing that fascinates me. See, I speak dyslexically. Thing that fascinates me from the stories that I've been hearing
Yeah.
is that it's all energy, and that when you think, you don't speak, you just know,
Mhm.
and that there is no beginning, no middle, no end of time, that it's all,
Just there.
it's just there.
Yeah. When you
And that fascinates me.
when you go to the ninth dimension, that's where like what we call like the dimension of God. Where when I meditate and I go there, I see I'm there in complete darkness, but yet I know everything that's going on all at once, and I can hear and see everything. But also, I'm just there with myself, and so these ideas will grow as we grow ourselves too. So the fascination with near death experiences are fascinate us because in reality, we all kind of like, as humans, we all like, well, what's next? Because that gives us comfort. It's the reason why people believe in a separate God and a place called heaven and all that stuff, because it comforts us. Because truth be told, people don't know what's going to happen to them. You can believe all you want. You can say, I totally believe in that. But I've worked with hospice for 9.5 years. And let me tell you, when the Grim Reaper is approaching and they know it, you could see the fear come into their eyes. You could see like
Yeah.
they question everything. They ask me, they'll be like, what's really going to happen to me, etc. And they could be the most structurally faithful or spiritual person, but when that moment comes, it truth shows we don't know. And so what we have to understand is it's not like life and death is not really like, it doesn't actually happen.
Yeah.
Like like you don't really die. Like when we see it here as someone dies, their body falls to the ground, whatever happens, we find, they've passed away in their sleep. But when you actually, it's kind of like your soul like kind of pops out from inside and expands outward and flips, and all of a sudden that's what we call death, and now you're a spirit. And then when we're born, it kind of re goes back into itself, and then we create a life. So it's kind of like like there was toys back in the 80s where you can turn them inside out and then you could turn them back in. It's similar to that. So our question for death is us trying to understand the cycle that always happens.
Well, that makes sense. I appreciate you taking the time to talk about that. Um, Before we come back to the trapped and endless cycle of suffering, I want to talk about fate and the misconceptions that we have about spirituality, because I think you've hit on that some with this last topic.
Well, fate is just what we kind of said. Have you ever done something and you don't know why you did it, and you're just like, why did I just do that? Like, what was that?
All the freaking time. I'm like, what possessed you to do that?
No, that was fate. That was your higher self making you with that little controller, making you do something to cause an experience in your life. And so
Mhm.
we think of fate as something terrible because we hear fate, fate versus free will. Well, I want free will. Well, yeah, but you need fate in order to have experiences. Whether you perceive them as good or bad, that's going to create the emotional chaos and the judgment and everything. But like when I got into that little fender bender out there, I was sitting there. That was fate. I wasn't doing anything. Someone hit me from behind. Her foot supposedly slipped off. I think she was on the phone, not paying attention. And when I went to ask her for information, she reacted crazy and was like, "Oh, no, 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 I'm not talking to you," and ran into her car, locked her car, and then tried and that. And so her fate was to react that way and to get there so that it causes more chaos in her life because she doesn't understand the idea of responsibility. And when she popped back out of the car, she's like, "Well, our insurance is going up. You're being unfair." I was like, "Ma'am, you have to take responsibility for your life." And she did not like, "I don't want to hear that," and ran back in her car again. And so that was her higher self teaching her a lesson, and me reiterating that, and that saying, you need to learn to take responsibility, because where she's at in her evolution, she's not ready to take responsibility. So fate interjects and has to step in so that it can plan, so it can go about your life blueprint, so that you can have the experiences to eventually help you grow.
Okay. And that's good. Some of the misconceptions, I was going to say perceptions, misconceptions on spirituality. And it goes back to free will.
Yes.
My husband and I had a time of this a while back. And I mean, it's been quite a while back.
Yeah.
I got a little indignant because I grew up being told that God's will be done.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked at my husband one day and I said, then what in the hell am I trying so hard for?
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what I do, his will's going to be done.
And why is it a guy?
You know, it doesn't matter what I do.
Yeah.
You know, it's already dictated.
Yes.
And anyway, I did come to terms with that in my own life, but um, that is one of the reasons I also went on a quest to understand more about my higher self and things,
Yeah.
because it I know my belief system, and I believe in my belief system, with higher self and everything else. But does that mean that my belief system is what my higher self is telling me, or where I'm comfortable right now? And I'm okay accepting that and saying it could be either. At this moment in life, I don't know.
Yes.
So, you know, how do people go from being completely unaware to finding spirituality versus religion? And I'm nothing against religion. It helps a lot of people in a lot of ways. It's nothing against religion,
Yeah.
but spirituality is a whole different thing. It's like comparing a dog to an orange.
Or is it really? But
You know?
but is it really? I mean, think about that. We people in spirituality think that religious people are limited, right? Because they believe in a God, they do whatever the God says, or whatever their religion says. They judge, they do all this. There are some very nice religious people. My neighbor's one of them, and that.
Yeah,
But even in that is limited because I could see the way some of the conversations go. But spirituality is no different, right? They believe
right,
certain things. They're not going to change. They're not going to, they're not going to, if someone comes with something new, even me, I'll bring something new. And even spiritual people are just as resistant. Right. And
right,
even people on your guests, there's going to be some guests that are going to be like, oh my God, I love that with Raina. And there's going to be some guests that are going to be like, nope, Raina's wrong. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's cuckoo, and that's fine. I'm not here to force anybody's open-mindedness
right,
or in that. I understand this because I communicate with everything. I understand this because my belief systems were way different years ago than they are today. Everything that I get is because the information is presented to me and it's shown to me and I experience it. And when you said, well, how do I know like with my belief systems versus being well, that's the thing is if you want to no longer be an NPC or have non-free will, you're always going to have fate. Even with me, there are certain times you'll see something that's meant to happen in my life and I go totally dumb and I'm like, and all of a sudden it happens and then it snaps me back into reality. I'm like, oh, there it was meant to be. And now I have to handle the situation. It was like a test. Okay, here's the test that's presented to you. But in order for us to do that, we have to let go of everything. So if I stripped away the doctor, if I stripped away who you used to be in business and the marketing and everything else, I stripped away your mom, you being a mom, and I stripped away your belief systems, angels, everything that you're taught, a God and everything like that, who would you be and what would you know? If you were born and I placed you on an isolated mountain or an isolated island and there was no influence whatsoever, who would you be? And so me, I understand who I am because I
right,
stripped away all that. The person I used to be and the way I grew up was way different than who I am now. I don't
right,
I don't teach belief systems. This is not my belief system. This is information that's presented to me through the universe, through myself, through meditation, my guides, everything, which is still me. And,
right,
and as I evolve, the information changes and evolves too.
right. Well, and like you said, if you took away the doctor, it's not who I am. It's something, one of the many things I accomplished in my life at some point.
Yes.
It helped me greatly in business because I had a degree in the area in which I worked.
Yes.
Um, and so for 20 years, everybody who knows me as Dr. Karen Perkins.
Yeah.
And I always say, just call me Karen.
Yes.
That's something I did. I am Karen. That's who I am. I am not that. And
Yes.
I agree with you on taking away being a parent. How often do parents say, I am Joey's mom? Or instead of saying Joey happens to be my son,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we are other people's something, and we are these other things. And
Yes.
so that was a wonderful question. And I think it's a good one to ask, have everyone really ponder in our audience.
It, Karen, it's such a hard thing. It really is, because we are creatures of habit. Our brain works with attachments. It works in association. It says, our prefrontal cortex is like, okay, what am I observing here, and how can I associate, with a smell, touch, hear, whatever. Because if I say, if we hear like an old jingle from something, it'll bring us back to 1982 when this happened. Or we go to here, we like, our brain works that way. So it is very normal for us to be conditioned to us adapt to something that may be not true. And we do it all the time. If we hear something enough, our brain says, well, I hear it enough by enough people, so it must be true. So I'm not even going to question it. And that's the death of who we are as far as free will. Because as long as we believe in the things that we're taught here, as I said in the last show, like the third dimension is meant to place a lot of illusions, a lot of mistruths, and that's so that we stay trapped in this like endless cycle. And when we talked about the matrix earlier, we're not trying to get out of it. The matrix is meant to trap us, to keep us here, so that we can I always use the Rubik's cube. You remember the Rubik's cube from?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you mess it all up. At first it's perfect, you mess it all up and there's colors everywhere, right? And then you spend a lot of time flipping it, turning it, spinning it, and hopefully sometime down the road you figure it out, right? That's exactly
Yeah,
what
that's where you pull all the stickers off and then move them around.
yeah, just take off the whole face.
Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. That was rude. But you said that. It's like, yeah, I figured it out.
I have no
That's the only way.
Yeah, you have no clue how many people I know that have done that. That's why it's so funny.
I really didn't, but I did never figure the cube out either.
Well, but that's the funny thing. If you understand the Rubik's Cube, it's a simple pattern. You got to spin it a certain way once, another way another time, another way another time, and back another way. And you repeat that pattern, and with a short amount of time, it goes right back to normal. And so let's apply that to life. Okay, you can either sit there and look at the garbage and just keep spinning it around because you don't understand that it works in a pattern. And that's when we buy into our belief systems. That's when we attach ourselves to, oh, I'm this person, I'm important because I have money, because people respect me, all these things. I have to believe in this god or this goddesses or this or that or blah blah. And you're just spinning that cube around, getting nowhere. It's not until you evolve, until you say, okay, I'm tired of spinning this cube. I'm really tired of this. There's got to be a solution to this cube. And that's when we start to say, okay, well, let's try this pattern. Let's try this. Let's not just keep spinning it any which way and just hope it just goes back together. And that's when we start to evolve and we start to say, okay, we start to use our brain and we start to think. And that's why it's so important for your listeners to understand this, because it may be rough, and I get it. I'm sure so many of them were like, nope, I don't agree with this. That's wrong, and that. But the moment we start to understand it, the moment we let our ego say, okay, ego, let me try to listen to this. Let me listen to what she's saying rather than just stopping it. That's the same thing as saying, well, let me stop spinning this cube and random things. Let me see if there's a pattern here. Let me experiment with the pattern that she's talking about and see if it changes. And I know it will, because when I did it, and many of my students over the years have done it, you watch them grow, and all of a sudden, the moment they let go of who they used to be, the belief systems, everything here on earth, and just be them, and that their life completely changes.
Well, and I want to really, I don't want to use the word beg, but I'm going to use the word beg. I implore all of the people listening to be open.
Yeah.
And you may or may not agree with what Raina said. You may or may not agree with near death experiences. You may or may not agree with a certain religion. You may or may not agree with the weather man or woman. I mean, it doesn't matter what you believe. It matters that you're open to continued growth and development.
Yes.
And if you can take that continued growth and development and expand who you are, you will evolve.
Yes.
And regardless of what your base core belief is, you never once said it's wrong. And I just want everybody to make sure they know that. She never said your base core belief is wrong. She said that we've got a higher self that is basically pulling the strings like we do when we play games. And I respect that immensely, Raina, immensely. And I have had some real aha moments last week and again this week. And I really appreciate, you talking about that and that endless cycle of suffering. Why do we put ourselves in that endless cycle of suffering?
Because we're unwilling to listen or grow. We don't. You said the word comfortable. We're comfortable with our. If we think that something's the truth, even if we don't know it's the truth, if we think, oh, it's going to make, well, I'm comfortable. Well, why do we stay in terrible relationships? Well, I'd rather be with somebody than nobody at all, right? I'm comfortable. And that's exactly why. So we are comfortable when what we've been taught to believe, and we don't want to face the truth. And if like I came from a very abused like childhood, full of abuse, full of violence, and that for a lot of people that can be tough to face. That's very hard to face. And so it's easier to be comfortable with something and say, well, let's not just rock the boat, because what if I'm wrong? Well, there is no right or wrong. And when we start getting out of those ideas, but until then, you're going to constantly be in that cycle. It's the same thing with, as you said, like when people want to grow, like, hey, I'm not telling you to believe the information that I'm giving you the information. If you're not
Yeah.
ready for it, that's okay. That doesn't make you a good or bad person. And that you have to figure out who you are in this lifetime. And it's not a goal or a race to get to, Raina's, where Raina's at, or Dr. Karen Perkins, or wherever. It's not a goal. It's not like a race. It's not a competition. You're at where you're at, and you're meant to be where you're at so that you can evolve and understand the information that's presented to you now. And until you understand that information, you're going to kind of battle that. Well, when am I going to break out of that endless cycle? When am I going to stop being comfortable? And when am I just going to say, you know what? I got to do it. I got to rip that Band-Aid off, and I just got
Right.
to do it.
And I'm there with you, sister. I'm that band-aid. I got it in my fingers. I just now need to pull it.
Just call it.
And,
That's what you
uh,
thought.
well, seriously, and I mock and talk about that, but um, one of my friends that called me this week going, oh, Raina, she said, you have always taught the same stuff people do in spirituality, but you taught it from a different angle. And she's like, I now see the spirituality behind what you're teaching. You've now incorporated the two. And I know I have a long way to go still, but I have
Well,
come so far. And I am so open to continue to grow and to evolve.
yeah.
And I know I'll never be 100% there, because as soon as I am, I'll probably start all over again. So I can't say I know. I trust that it'll start all over again. And that's okay,
Yeah.
because that's 9/10 of the fun. You play a baseball game, you win. You don't say, okay, I won and go home. You practice and go to the next game and win again.
Yes. And
Yes, I played baseball.
oh, did you really? Well, then we have a lot of competition to talk about.
Yeah.
But you know what, Dr. Karen, it's we all are, even myself. I'm always Caleb will attest to this. He sees how much I work on myself. It is a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 and one quarter days a year, and that I never take a break. When I'm sleeping, I go into the fourth dimension. I work on myself. When I awake, I'm constantly, and you constantly see me going and evolving. No one, I don't care how advanced you think you are, and that the more you think you're advanced, the less you are. The more you think you don't know, probably the more advanced that you actually are. I wake up every day saying, people look at me and say, "Oh, Raina, and I'm like, no. I was like, I wake up every day saying, "Oh my God, there's so much I have to learn every day." But at the same time, it excites me. I'm like, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
there's so much more I have to learn." You know, and I want people to have that same thrill. Don't worry about what place you're at or if you're here or there
Mm,
or wherever. Just wake up every day saying, I have an open mind. I'm going to learn new things and learn them.
yeah. And that's where I'm at. And that's where I implore the audience to be, is to always have that open mind, because every day it will be every day is a great day. Oh, here's this. I got to show you my mug. I don't know if you can see
Ah,
that. See that cute little boy?
yes, yes.
And it says today, yeah, today is a great day for a great day.
Yes, it is.
Uh, and it doesn't matter what's happening, your fate, you know, you fall down a flight of stairs at a hotel and have to walk across the parking lot to the hospital on a broken ankle because you can't walk right. But did I learn something from that? Well, yeah, actually, learned a lot of things, and one of them was patience with myself and with other people.
Yes.
So oh, woe is me! I broke my ankle when my husband was in the hospital, and I walked on it anyway, just so I could go see him.
Yeah,
It's a good story.
it is.
It's a good story, but does it matter? It did to us,
Yeah.
but it goes back to who are you, why are you, how are you. I want to remind everybody again about my show Monday, and then I'm going to turn the end over to you. Um, Monday, 1 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to have Karenisms, and this week, we're going to talk more in depth about the Power of You Healing Energy Retreat that we're having here in Olón, Ecuador. It's all inclusive except for the airfare, but we'll talk more about that on Monday. But be sure and join us. Same channel, same places, YouTube, Facebook, and I'll put out the email notices and stuff so you know where to go to watch it. But bring your questions and be sure to come up with good questions so that we can answer them. And for Raina's coupon code, don't forget I am 500, and the QR code's above her beautiful head there in the corner. But her coupon code is I am 500. And that being said, Raina, I would love you to leave us with some final words of wisdom, and then I'd like to play the I am evolution, if that's all right.
I don't know about wisdom, but what I will say is, real truth is hard, people. It really is. Life is challenging. Uh, we set these expectations that we're supposed to know everything. We're supposed to be somebody. We're supposed to do all these things. And we're perfect the way we are. And that's part of the journey. That's part of the evolution, is understanding these things. Consequences are not good or bad. They just are. They teach us. They help us to grow. And if you keep an open mind in life, you'd be surprised and amazed how much more you're going to enjoy life, because life is just filled with little moments and nothing more. We're always in the present. There is no past or future. It's just always now. And when you learn to live in the now and just say, you know what, I have to accept this. I have to accept who I am and just be you. You're going to find out how amazing you and life really are.
Awesome. Thank you for those final words. That's
Experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
Oh, that is wonderful. Um, and if you didn't get those written down and you don't have Raina's contact information, you can go ahead and send the information to me in the messengers or whatever, and I will make sure that you guys get connected in some realm or way or how. Raina, bless you for coming, and I appreciate that. Wonderful show, everybody. It's been a great week, and I'll see you all again next week. Bye.
Bye, everybody.